Week 9 is officially here. We're only 5 weeks into week 1 of the fantasy playoffs, guys. So keep grinding, keep doing your thing. As always, we like to bring you our start sits of the week. I have the running back position this week. We bring you start and sits. Teams on bye this week's Browns, Cowboys, Broncos, Giants, Steelers, and 49ers. So make sure you take those guys out of your lineup. And I'm going to be bringing you some of my most confident starts of the week. So stay tuned and let's get straight into the video. My first start running back this week is Miles Sanders versus the Houston Texans. This is probably the best start of the week. The Texans currently give up the most fantasy points to the running back position. This past week, Miles Sanders only carried the ball 9 times, 78 yards, scored a touchdown, 13 fantasy points. But once again, they are playing the Houston Texans, who currently give up the most fantasy points to the running back position. The week before, this past week in week 8, they just gave up 35 plus fantasy points to the king himself, 32 tokes, 219 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The week before that, Josh Jacobs, 36 fantasy points, 20 tokes, 143 yards, 3 touchdowns. Could this be the big game for Miles Sanders? I believe that's what we're all hoping for. That is exactly what Nick Sirianni, this team, should be taking advantage of, is utilizing Miles Sanders, getting it done on the ground instead of, utilizing their wide receivers a little bit more. It is an early game. It's a Thursday night game, so stay tuned for that. But I am starting Miles Sanders with confidence. And at number 2, we have Aaron Jones versus the Detroit Lions. The Lions currently give up the 4th most fantasy points to the running back position. This past week, Aaron Jones played the Buffalo Bills, one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he did pretty good in a fantasy perspective. Over 19 fantasy points, 20 carries on the ground, 143 yards on the ground, but he caught 4 out of 5 passes in the air, and that's exactly what we were expecting, him to get opportunity in the air all along, right? You kind of saw that uptick in the past 2 weeks. Week 7, he caught 9 out of 10 targets in the air. Allen Lazard is out, or it could be out potentially. Christian Watson can't stay healthy. Romeo Doubs is dropping every single pass. The only guy that Aaron Rodgers can rely on is Aaron Jones. So I expect him to continue to get the work out in the air. And they sort of found the rhythm on the ground as well this past week. So I think they're going to continue to do what they did versus the Buffalo Bills and do the same thing to their division rivals, the Detroit Lions. So start Aaron Jones with confidence. And at number 3, we have Raheem Mostert, Raheem the Dream versus the Chicago Bears. The Bears currently give the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position. And this past week, Tony Pollard versus the Bears, over 33 fantasy points, 14 carries, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns. Crazy work. Raheem the Dream this past week against the Lions, not amazing. 14 carries, 64 yards, over 7 fantasy points. But what's crazy is that Raheem is going against the Bears. And what did the Bears just do? They traded away Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. The heart of the team, the heart of the defense, I'm telling you, is no longer there. So that means one of the highest tacklers in the National Football League right now is no longer on the Chicago Bears. Surely Raheem the Dream could run all over this team, or just his team is going to run all over the other team. The Dolphins are going to be throwing and running on the Chicago Bears, So I'm starting Raheem the Dream with confidence this week. My 4th start of the week this week is Josh Jacobs versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags currently give up the 8th most fantasy points to the running back position. This past week for JJ, only 7 fantasy points. Not necessarily sure what happened. They just got bottled up by the Saints, and I think that's not going to be the case here with the Jags, right? So against the Saints, 10 carries, 43 yards, still have 4.3 yards per carry, which is decent. But let me tell you the numbers in the past 3 weeks for Josh Jacobs, which I believe have been incredible. And I think you should continue to start him with confidence, especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Week 7 against Houston, 20 carries, 143 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 36 fantasy points. Week 5 against KC, 21 carries, 154 yards, a touchdown, 5 receptions, all 5 out of 5, over 30 fantasy points against Kansas City. Week 4 against Denver, over 34 fantasy points, 28 tokes on the ground, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught 5 out of 6. Look, Josh Jacobs is going to bounce back. He's had an amazing run. He's a top, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's a top 10 running back right now. And that's going to continue, especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a good team. They're going down to Duval, but I think they need to bounce back and have a good game here. They just got shut out this past week against against the Saints, where we weren't expecting. You expecting them to score some sort of points, but they got completely shut out. And I think they're going to come off fast and running the ball and going back to the identity there on the ground with Josh Jacobs. So start Josh Jacobs with confidence. And my fifth start of the week is Kenyon Drake versus the New Orleans Saints. The Saints currently give up the 8th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. But what's interesting about this matchup is that Rashad Bateman could miss time, Mark Andrews could potentially miss time, and Gus Edwards could potentially miss time. So you're left with Devin Duvernay, Isaiah Likely, and then Kenyon Drake. And Kenyon Drake is the guy that I believe is going to be seeing a lot of an uptick on the ground and in the air, especially. Obviously, you saw what he did versus the Giants in week 6, 10 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown. Tampa Bay, he kind of picked it up. He took over that role for Gus Edwards, 16 fantasy points, 7 carries on the ground, 62 yards, which was crazy. So he was averaging nearly 9 yards per carry. But what was crazy is that he caught 4 out of 4 targets in the air and caught a touchdown. So once again, Rashad Bateman could be out, Mark Andrews could be out, and Gus Edwards all could be out in this game, which is on Monday night if I'm not mistaken. So I think Kenyon Drake could be a very, very good flex option or even desperation play in the low RB2 with all the bye weeks going on. So start Kenyon Drake with confidence. And my last start of this week, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is Antonio Gibson versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings currently give the 10th least most fantasy points to the running back position. But what Gibson's been doing in the air specifically has been very, very intriguing. And he's kind of taken over that J.D. McKissic role, which we all expected J.D. to continue to go on. But Ron Rivera said, well, Antonio Gibson is not good enough to be our bell cow, but he's good enough to be a pass catcher, which he was in college, right? Antonio Gibson versus the Colts, 7 carries, only 19 yards on the ground, but what he did in the air, caught 7 out of 7, 58 yards in the air and a touchdown, over 20 fantasy points. Week 7, nearly the same thing, kind of. 10 carries on the ground, 59 yards, caught 3 out of 4 and caught a touchdown in the air. Over 16 fantasy points. You're seeing to start to emerge as a pass catcher. And I think that's what's intriguing here. And with Taylor Heineke, he's using his legs a lot more, where Brian Robinson is, only getting maybe, third and ones, second and ones. He's not getting these big chunk plays where they're going to be down a lot in these games. They're going to be fighting for every single play, every single yard, and Antonio Gibson is going to be in the flat, is going to be running an, Texas route, whatever the case may be, and getting those fantasy points for you. So if you do need a desperation play, once again, with all these bye weeks, Antonio Gibson could be a good play. So start with confidence in week 9. As always, we like to bring you our start running backs of the week and also our sit running backs of the week. So my first sit running back this week is a group, and that's the Rams running back room versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs currently give up the 5th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Who is it going to be? You tell me. It's not going to be Darrell Henderson. Only 4 carries on the ground this past week. It's not going to be Ronnie Rivers because he's been up and down. And who the hell is Ronnie Rivers? Who are we going to trust him? Pick him up off of waiver wires? No, we're not going to pick him up and start him. Cam Akers is not going to start unless they do trade for Kareem Hunt, and then we can have a different conversation. But as of right now, Kareem Hunt is not on this team as I'm recording this video, and Darrell Henderson and Ronnie Rivers aren't guys that I am wanting to start. So do not start Darrell Henderson moving forward, or any of these guys moving forward into week 9. My second sit of the week is also another group. It's the Panthers running back against Foreman and Chuba versus the Bengals. The Bengals currently give the 2nd fewest amount of points to the running back position. Look, and this one's kind of shaky because I know a lot of people are on bye weeks for your teams, and you might have to start Chuba and or Deontay Foreman in a desperation play. But the Bengals are really, really good against the run. I mean, we just saw what they did on Monday night, and that was terrible. But I do believe that's going to be a bounce back game for them, especially versus the Panthers, who are struggling right now, but who's also being very surprising in the air now with PJ Walker. They found a spark. Deontay Foreman this week against the Atlanta Falcons, 26 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 31 fantasy points. They played the Atlanta Falcons, who give up a top 5 amount of fantasy points to the running back position. I'm not sure if I want to start anyone in this backfield versus the Bengals. Once again, this could be a desperation play for some of you guys, but if you do have options, I will be sitting Foreman and Chuba Hubbard because we could see them. Okay, we kind of got back to reality here in week 9, and I think that's what the Bengals need to do. They need to have a spark in this offense, and I think that's what could potentially happen for this Bengals team. So I'm sitting Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard if necessary. And my last sit of the week, and that is any Jets running back versus the Bills. So James Robinson or Michael Carter, and it's not sexy. Once again, I know you're struggling with the running back position, but I think this is not a good matchup. The Bills currently give up the 6th least amount of fantasy points to the running back position. There's no one that I want to start in this offense, I'll be honest, versus the Bills. Zach Wilson doesn't look good. Garrett Wilson is invisible. Elijah Moore is no longer on that team, in my personal opinion. Like, one target? Why you even have him on the team? Number one, the running back, and then James Robinson was, getting acclimated this week. Michael Carter was just passing dump off passes, which could potentially happen here in the Bills. But what's the upside there? Is he going to get you 8 points? Is he going to get you 7 points? I don't see him getting more than 10 points personally, but I could be wrong. Look, this is a really great defense. I do believe the Bills can get away with this game, in my personal opinion, which could be resulting into maybe people getting benched, or maybe, just not having the opportunity that we all thought it would be, because the Bills will destroy this team, in my personal opinion. Now, I hope I am wrong for Zach Wilson's sake, because I am a believer in Zach Wilson, but I'm going to be sitting the Jets running back going into week 9. Guys, as always, we like to say there's still plenty of time. There's still things to do. Get active, make some trades, hit the waiver wires, do whatever you have to do to try and win your leagues. Comment down below with any of your fantasy start sit questions. We can definitely help you out. And as always, we go live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday to answer all of your start sit questions. And good luck week 9.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.